Hello, everybody. I'm Parsha Becky, and welcome back for another week of Parsha. As I'm sure you recall, we are currently in the middle of reading the third book of Chumash, the book of Vayikra. Vayikra means he called, and the book is called that because, oh, I'm sorry. Hello? Oh, who's calling? It's Hashem calling. Hashem, who are you calling for? Hashem is calling for Moshe. Hashem, I'm going to pass the phone to Moshe. I have to get back to Parsha. So sorry about that. I know. Hashem isn't really calling on the phone. But for the whole book of Vayikra, Hashem is calling Moshe to give instructions relating to the Mishkan that we just finished building at the end of the book of Shemot. Now, the name of this week's Parsha is called Tazria. And Tazria means when she gives birth. And it's called that because at the start of the Parsha, let's imagine there's a woman. She's married. She's going to have a baby. Tazria, when she gives birth to her baby, one of two things happens. Either it's a baby boy or it's a baby girl. If it's a baby boy, then of course we know when the baby boy is 8 days old, what happens? He has a Brit Milah. And also now the Torah gives us new information. If she has a baby boy, then for 33 days, she does not go to the Mishkan. She can stay at home with her baby. She's not going to the Mishkan. If it's a baby girl, then for 66 days, she doesn't go to the Mishkan. She stays at home with her baby. And now at the end of that time, at the end of the 33 days for a baby boy, or the 66 days for a baby girl, she does go to the Mishkan. She brings a sheep and a bird. Now, if, the Torah says, sheep are expensive. And she just had a baby. Babies are also expensive. What if she can't afford the sheep? The Torah says, no problem. She can't afford the sheep, then instead of bringing a sheep and a bird, she can just bring two birds. So she brings her sheep and a bird or her two birds to the Mishkan, and the Kohen will do the whole korban with them, and then she can go back to the Mishkan whenever she feels like after that. And then the Parsha is going to change topic to another Mishkan-related topic. Now the Parsha is going to tell us about something called tzara'at. Now, tzara'at is a skin condition. It's a kind of rash. There's actually a few different ways the Torah describes that tzara'at can look. But normally, if you get a rash, who do you show it to? Your doctor, maybe, a medical professional. But tzara'at is not really a medical condition. It looks like one, but it's not. Tzara'at comes directly from Hashem. So the only person to really help with to go to when you have tzara'at is the Kohen. In fact, if you think you have tzara'at, you have to show it to the Kohen, and only when the Kohen says you have tzara'at do you officially have tzara'at. So let's say somebody has a rash and they think it might be tzara'at. They've shown it to the doctor. The doctor's like, this is not a medical condition. Maybe you should talk to a Kohen about that. So they show it to the Kohen. And one of three things is going to happen. The Kohen will have one of three answers. Either the Kohen says, yes, you have tzara'at. I read my Kohen manual. That looks like tzara'at. You have tzara'at. Or the Kohen will say, nope, you don't have tzara'at. Go back to your doctor and get a second opinion. Or the Kohen will say, I'm not sure. Now, if the Kohen says, I'm not sure if you have tzara'at or not, that person has to wait and self-isolate for 7 days. And at the end of those 7 days, they're going to go back to the Kohen. And the Kohen's going to check again. And if the rash has faded, or whatever other descriptions the Torah gives where they can tell after 7 days that it's definitely not tzara'at, the Kohen says, don't worry, you don't have tzara'at. You should wash off your clothes from the time that you thought you had tzara'at, and then you're clean. You can go back to the Mishka whenever you want. You don't have tzara'at. And if the rash has spread, the Kohen's like, wow, now I waited 7 days, it's definitely tzara'at. Then the Kohen says, okay, you have tzara'at. And the Torah gives all sorts of details and descriptions, like a whole manual for the Kohen to tell what is and what is not tzara'at. And the Torah says, if the person has tzara'at, whether it was a yes right away or yes after the 7 days, they rip their clothes and they have to self-isolate outside the camp. They don't go to the Mishkan until they're finished with having tzara'at. And we're going to have to stay tuned for next week's Parsha to find out what happens when a person's tzara'at is gone. But for now, the Torah continues. Before we go back to what happens when a person's tzara'at is gone, the Torah tells us something wild. The Torah says that clothing can also get tzara'at. What? That's great. That clothing does not get a rash. But we know that tzara'at is directly from Hashem. So Hashem can make tzara'at happen to a person or clothing, but that can't happen with any kind of medical condition otherwise. So let's say you've got some cloth and if you checked, you took it to the laundry, you brought it home to the dry cleaners, it's not a real stain because it's not coming out. You think it might be tzara'at. Again, just like with a person, it's not officially tzara'at until the Kohen says so. And if you think it might be tzara'at, you have to show it to the Kohen. So the person takes their piece of cloth and they show it to the Kohen, and then they set that piece of cloth aside for 7 days. And the end of those 7 days, the Kohen's going to take a look at it again. And the Kohen will see one of three things. Either one of two things. Either that mark, that rash on the stain in the cloth has spread, in which case Kohen says this piece of cloth has tzara'at, you have to burn the whole thing. Or it's gone, in which case Kohen says, okay, your cloth doesn't have tzara'at, you just need to wash it, and it's clean, you can use it for whatever you want. Or the stain has stayed exactly the same. If it stayed exactly the same, we're going to wash it out, and then we're going to set it aside for another 7 days. And the end of that next 7 days, the Kohen's going to check again. And one of a couple things will happen. If it is still there, and the Kohen says, okay, we washed it and the stain is still there, this piece of cloth has tzara'at, we have to burn the whole thing. We burn it. But if it's gone, then we're going to rip out the part of the cloth that had the stain before it got washed out. And then we're going to leave it for another 7 days. And if the stain comes back on the cloth, even after all of that, we burn it because it has tzara'at. But if it doesn't come back after that, we can repair the piece of cloth and wash it, and then it is all good. So that's the end of Parshat Tazria, and we're going to have to stay tuned for next week's Parsha to find out what happens to a person who had tzara'at who thinks that their tzara'at is gone. Shabbat Shalom.